going to jump straight to the comment that was asked on a recent episode. So someone jumped on and said, hey, should I own international? And if so, how much of my portfolio should be allocated to international? So good question. I'll kind of start with, it obviously depends on situation, but we can kind of talk about general range of what we think might make sense for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Kind of general rule of thumb.
0 to 100%.
Yeah, somewhere in that range. No, I would say, when you look at our portfolios, you're going to be typically, again, with exceptions, you're going to be somewhere in the, 4 to 12% range, right? Maybe more conservative portfolio, 3 or 4 or 5%. More aggressive portfolio, 12, maybe upwards of 15, depending on the situation and where things are at. But I do know Eli actually got into this a while back. I don't know if we talked about it. I can't remember if we talked about it in one of our advisory meetings or if it was just me and him, but he was like showing the research on, hey, it actually, shows like a much higher allocation can make sense. Now, that's been tough because international didn't do anything for so long. But anyways, I would say 4 to 12, 4 to 15% would be kind of my general range. What are your guys' thoughts?
And again, I don't think there's a question asked of our panel that we can have a black and white answer.
Yeah.
It's always depends.
It's in the gray.
I'm kind of on the mindset of Eli. If you're a younger, a more aggressive investor, most of my clients are not this way, but you go 20, 25%. I don't think that's unreasonable.
No,
you get 30 to 40, and it's not as much about the risk that you're taking necessarily with the international. It's what are you giving up on the other side that, but international really for the past 15 years, except for the last year, has underperformed and underperformed significantly.
Sure.
So if you're of the mindset of it's got to revert back to the mean, then now's a pretty good time. But I think most portfolios, I probably wouldn't go more than 20, 25, even in an aggressive model.
Yeah, I would encourage you to look back like on a 100-year model, right? Look back 100 years. I know that seems so far-fetched or kind of silly, but international has actually outperformed U.S. going back 100 years. But think about 100 years where U.S. has gone since, let's say, Reagan in the last 50 years. So it's 1983 on our technology advancement, everything. U.S. has been such a powerhouse that the U.S. markets, and that's led to 15 years of outperformance. So you can look back at recent history and say, I don't need international in my portfolio. You can look back at long history and say it makes sense. I think like going back to our original conversation about 401k, if you're young, your dollar cost average in a 401k, I do encourage people to have some in international. Your dollar cost average and you're buying it every paycheck. I think that's so smart. The percentage amount, like Lee said, upwards of 20%, 25% probably the maximum, I would say, based on our U.S. markets. But everybody's got different things. It is considered a little more aggressive, a little more risky, and it's not done well in the last 15 years other than last year. It's a tricky
the right answer, we talked about this not long ago, is, your allocation has to be something that you can stick with. And that's both on the upside and the downside. So is it something that, hey, if international is underperforming, are you gonna ditch it just because it's underperforming for a period of time, right? Or is it something that you can actually stick with? Because, where you can really get burned is when you're trying to make large swings. Hey, I'm going to have a lot of international, or I'm going to trim it down to nothing and making moves. It's like that's when you look back, dramatically underperformed for a 10-year period because you're trying to, time things. So
exactly. I
just
agree
find
with
the allocation that you can stick with, even if it's underperforming or on the upside or downside that you believe in, and can ride through the good and the bad.
I like it.
We don't have to go on much longer on the international side, but earlier in our career, emerging markets was much more favorable than developed international markets, which I find interesting. Now, you don't even hear talk of emerging markets now. It's pretty much the developed.
Some of the emerging markets have become developed, right? It's confusing in that regard. Like we had a lot of Asia was considered emerging. Now you have some of that considered developed, even though it's not really, but
not too long ago, the BRIC stocks, Brazil, Russia, India, China were all considered emerging markets,
and that was
even though those are the largest
crazy
countries in the world.
It was a hot topic in our career, a lot of it. The BRICS.
Back in the 1800s.
Exactly.
So
long ago.
All thoughts and opinions shared in this recording belong to the participants. This podcast is meant to inform and educate and should not be seen as solicitation or endorsement for business. The hosts of the Market Moment podcast are employees of Mach 1 Financial Group, LLC.